welcome to this next panel. We are doing crowdfunding and alternative revenue streams. My name is Andrea. I will be your moderator for this panel. We also have on the panel Amy, Kevin, and Lawrence. We all know Amy, so if you want to do a quick introduction.
Sure. So I'm jumping in last minute to this one. We had some people unfortunately need to not attend due to various reasons, and I will be serving sort of a moderator role here and question asker for these wonderful experienced people in the realm of crowdfunding. I am a science fiction author, Nebula nominated, and USA Today bestselling. I do mostly space opera stuff. And then Kevin, go ahead.
Me? Okay. My name is Kevin McLaughlin. I have 83 published assorted science fiction and fantasy books out at this point, and continuing to write more at a good pace. I've done a couple of Kickstarters badly, so I know all the things to not do. But I've also learned all the things, a bunch of the things that work really well and to do. And I run a Patreon now for a little over a year that's still cruising along nicely.
I'm Lawrence M. Schoen. Nowadays, I write mostly light, humorous space opera, but I'm a hybrid author, and if you go back to my big 5 books, they're deep and serious and full of social issues and make you go, wow, this guy must have a doctorate, which I do. But I'm way lagging behind Kevin. I just published, or coming up on Tuesday, I'll be publishing my 31st book, which seems like a very large number to me. And now I feel inadequate. Thanks, Kevin.
Coming from the trad space, that is actually quite
coming from the trad space, that's actually really, really good.
Well, there we go. All right. Now I feel happy
Welcome
again.
to indie.
Yeah.
You sold many books up on me, so
I have. Fortunately, it's not a competition, and I'm so much older than you, Andrea. But I have quite recently run a Kickstarter, which involved 100 other authors. Don't try this at home, kids. It's on a closed track, and I have a Patreon that I use to offset my obscene medical costs. Because you got to have a good story if you want people to give you money.
But that is a very good reason to ask why.
Yes,
to have
for
these
sure.
sort of things. How about you, Kevin? You have Patreon as well?
I do.
You said? Why did you go to Patreon?
Honestly, because I wanted to try something different. I just wanted to do a thing where I'm telling a story by putting up a couple chapters a week and just see how it went. And it seems like it's gone really well. And now Vella's coming out too, and so I want to do more of it. More than anything else. Although I have been very strongly considering making a switch to Ghost, which is a blogging system similar to WordPress that has added built-in automatic membership stuff. Ooh. So or WordPress, as another option, but doing it self-hosted off my own site and doing it behind a membership paywall that way instead. Because I'm not picking up an awful lot of people from Patreon. All of my Patreon people came there from my books and my email list, not from their people. So
yeah.
Yeah, because I've noticed I also have Patreon. I've been on Patreon for about 3 years now. And I consider it relatively successful because as an artist, it's a little bit different than being a writer. And a lot of artists have gone back and forth between using Patreon and using Ko-fi based on the fees. Have you guys had any issues with the fees, or are you guys pretty happy with the process on Patreon?
I like that I have to do very little, or I can ignore it entirely for months and then think, hey, how much money has accrued? Oh, wow! I can pay a bill. But it's the downside, I think, of the billing system with Patreon is if most of your patrons or any portion of your patrons are just throwing a buck at you.
Mm-hmm.
most of that, too much of that is eaten up by fees.
Mhm.
There's a percentage fee and then a flat fee, and I think I'd be happier in the long run if they just bumped up the percentage fee a little and did away with the flat fee, because that benefits people who have a lot of patrons who are throwing smaller amounts of money, if that makes sense. And I suspect, that if you do the analyses, you get a normal shaped curve, a bell-shaped curve on patron support, and most of your people are going to be at the $1, $2, or $5 level, and the folks who are throwing $50 a month at you, are bless them, first of all, are few and far between. And this assumes that you've got rewards at that lower level. And I'd be curious to check in with people who don't do levels and just say, pay whatever you want and here's what you're going to get.
I actually follow one person who does that. Her name is Melissa Gay. She's an artist, and she just has the $1 pay what you want. And so that way it gives everybody access to whatever she is posting every month. But she doesn't bother with the tiers. And I think she does quite well, but she's also quite popular in a lot of the fantasy circles because she does a lot of birds, science fiction and fantasy art. So she would be a person to look for as an example. It's just patreon.com/melissagay. It's very easy to find.
I think I need to write about cats, and that would bump up my following tremendously.
Right.
Cats in Space would be fantastic.
I actually published an anthology called Cats in Space. One of, I think there are probably 6 people have used that title over the years, but that's out of print now. Yeah, went away.
So what have you guys found? So I'm going to throw this question to Kevin. What have you found the most successful with your Patreon? Like, what do you think has worked for you so far?
What has worked for me so far? I like the interactions. I like the routine, regular interactions with the readers. That's one of the things that I find most interesting. I get a week rarely goes by that I don't have at least a couple people making some kind of comment somewhere on one of my posts. So I get to see this immediate response, this immediate feedback. If I don't post a episode on time, I get bugged about it by people. So if I've fallen behind or slacked off or something and didn't tell people in advance, I'm away this week, I'm not going to be able to put anything up. Don't worry, I'll make you up with an extra episode next week, kind of thing. If I didn't do that in advance, they immediately let me know that I didn't do that in advance. So in some ways, my readers actually help me stay on the writing straight and narrow, which helps me out a little bit. But mostly it's the various types of interactions with readers that I enjoy the most, I think.
You, Lawrence?
Yeah, I have to echo some of that. There's an accountability when you have to hit those deadlines, make sure the rewards go out. This was brought to my attention last month when I was going through a bit of a malaise, and the rewards were not going out, and the patrons were very good about it. They didn't drop out. They didn't say, "Screw you, Lawrence! You already cashed that check." But I have to make up for it. What I think I like best about it, though, is when I will post a reward. And I mean, people at the $1 level get a picture of my dog every month, for example, because I think life is just better with dogs in it. But I will use that as an opportunity to write about what's going on, or what I'm reading, or what I'm writing, or what chaos is in my life. And I like to think you were trying to make that personal connection. You're trying to open up your world to your readers and your supporters, because with the exception of those supporters who are also writers, and I have some of those, these are people who are there probably because of your books, and it's a different world for them. The idea that somebody could sit down and create, a universe bring these characters to life, make people feel for their characters. They want to know what's behind the book. They want to get to know the author. They want to invite you. It's I think the closest we get in some ways to that phenomenon that actors experience when they're on a show and they come into your living room once a week and you feel like you know them. Right? So many of our readers feel like they know us through our books, and then Patreon and talking to them directly because they're my supporters brings them in even closer, and I think that's a good thing, because particularly when I screw up and fail to post a reward in a timely fashion, it's not, well, he's just this author guy, but no, now I'm a real person to them, and they go, wow, well, I understand he's got crap going on. We'll cut him some slack, and that's useful to me, I think. And it particularly in this past year where we've all been so isolated, it's a little homier, if you will.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I am the poster child for what not to do with Patreon, where I got all of these amazing tiers put together, and I had all of these grand aspirations of I'm going to do a short story every quarter, and I'm going to do all this, and I did it like one quarter, and I managed to do it, and it's been like 2 years now since I posted anything. So I just want to say, for any of the creators out there who have put up a Patreon and then done nothing with it, you are not alone.
No.
But I would like to get back to it. I really liked what you said about accountability and having it there as a means to make yourself do it. So at some point I would like to go back. I just keep distracting myself with things like, let's start a convention. And then that takes up all of the time that I would have used on producing content for something like Patreon.
But see, then you post to your Patreon, hey, here are all the links to the convention I'm throwing.
I think I just need to go back through and rethink what I have on there as an offer and make it fit more to my life. Because like when I set it up, I was still living in Europe. It was before all of this, and I just haven't gone back to revisit it. So I think that's probably a fair statement of, as your life circumstances change, be flexible with what it is. And if people want to change the tiers or whatever, that's fine. They can adjust as you adjust.
I routinely ask my supporters, is this reward working for you? Would you rather have something else? And I'm constantly changing up the rewards, or sometimes the rewards are just not manageable for me. So I'll switch to a different reward. Case in point, we were talking about this a little before the recording started. I've been doing video readings. I'll take some short story of mine or a few chapters from a novel, and I'll do a reading, and I'll post those to a YouTube channel because I've had difficulty posting to Patreon, posting video to Patreon. And right now they're private. You can't get to them on my YouTube channel unless you have the link from Patreon. Eventually I'll make them more public, but this is a special, unique thing for the Patreon supporters, right? And that's a little more doable than some of the other stuff I was offering. Like the people who say, I'm going to write you a short story every month, over and above what other, the novels they're trying to work out. No.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
I did that as a tier as well when I first started. I'm like, okay, I wanted to do art and I wanted to do writing. And those were the two main things I really wanted to focus on. And over the past 3 years, I have definitely, I'll sit down, I'll look at what's working, I'll look at what's not, I'll look at what tiers are popular and which ones are not, and then drop the ones that aren't. Right. Take what I want to be able to do, like what I want for accountability, and shift it to a different tier. Maybe the price point was wrong. Maybe I need to make it so that it's quarterly instead of monthly. And I have revamped my system, I think 3-4 times. So like at least once a year, I'll be like, what's working, what's not. That's the one downside I have found with Patreon is I love my patrons. They are the best, but they're very quiet. They don't really respond. They just want to support me and be busy with their lives. And I'm okay with that. There's nothing wrong with that, but I would have liked a little bit more accountability from them. But again, I make sure that what I'm producing works for me. And the only way to really do that is to change it and see what works, see what doesn't work. And the best thing about it is that you're there for them, but they are also there for you, and they want to be able to support you and what you want to be able to do, what you want to be able to produce, what you can produce, especially over this past year with mental health being such a big aspect for all of us creatives, especially because our output is completely different. A lot of us require socializations, and we haven't been able to get that. We wanted to be able to experience things and travel things. That's where we get a lot of our ideas and our knowledge, and not being able to do that. So like, take time and do it and ask. And if it's not working, it's not working, but it's definitely worth taking time to find a way to make it work, if just because the accountability and the community that you can build from it is like, it's just so rewarding.
I think a useful component is to ask why you have a Patreon account. And for a very long time, I didn't. I had a day job that paid fairly well. And I felt that if I were to put up a Patreon account, I didn't need that money. My needs were met by the day job financially. When the day job went away, I said, okay, what is another revenue stream that I might have, and what is a compelling reason for that revenue stream? And the two came fairly quickly, one after the other. And when I got sick and the bills started coming in, I went, holy crap! Hey, time to set up a Patreon page. I was actually going to set up a drip page, and right around the time I was setting up the drip, they said, we're closing this down. You can still do it, but we're not going to support it anymore. We've sold this to another company. It's like, okay, Patreon! But there you go.
In my case, finding out about, I went to 20 Books Bali and found out from one of the other authors there that they were making mid 5 figures a year every year from Patreon. And I was like, wow, really? And this is somebody who's just posting chapters of stuff that they're publishing anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
I need to go back and rethink this whole thing, don't I?
Wow.
But
Yeah.
the other people who were doing that was very inspirational for me.
I want to be a guest on that person's Patreon and siphon some of that off somehow.
I have been subscribed to that person's Patreon, and I don't want to publicly say it, but I'll let you know later, Lawrence, if you want.
Okay.
I've been subscribed to that person's Patreon ever since Bali.
Though I would contend that if you could afford to go to 20 Books Bali, you probably shouldn't have a Patreon account either. But that's something else entirely.
If it makes an extra $50,000 a year, I'm actually not going to really complain.
Yeah.
No. I mean, even when it's covering a little bit of a medical bill, or for me, it pays for my art supplies every month, or rent, depending on where things are sitting. Like, every little penny counts, and that's usually why I still keep my $1 tier, is because, yes, not everybody can give you money, but they want to be able to support you, and you'd be surprised on how quickly that can add up. Because that $50,000 is not all $100 subscribers, and that to me is mentally crazy. That is, or 5 figures, not 50, but 5 figures. That's
even if you're just making, I'm only making like a couple $1,000s a year off of Patreon, guys. It's not much for my bottom line, but it gives my readers something extra. It gives me something extra in terms of the accountability and the contact. So for me, it's just been fun to do. So I'm doing it anyway. It's less about the income for me and more just about I'm enjoying it. So why not?
And I think there are other things that you can get out of it other than just, a dollar amount. For example, I mentioned I screwed up hitting my rewards on time last month. And as an apology and a thank you for staying with me, everybody above the dollar level, let's be honest, everybody above the $1 level got an arc of the new book.
Wow.
And because once it comes out, you know, I'm in KU. Amazon really doesn't want me giving away copies like that. Even if it says it's an ARC, you know, I think it's only a matter of time before somebody says, I don't know, your book came out 8 months ago. Why are you still distributing ARCs? But at the same time, you know, and that's a cool thing. Nobody else has it, right? So that's something of a collectible. It's something a patron should get. But it's also potentially advance reviews when the book goes live. People who've already read it, a little more word of mouth. So it's serving multiple purposes, you know, just like a character in your story should, right? And I think that's important because it's part of connecting with your supporters. It's part of letting them know that you're aware of your responsibilities. It goes back to being accountable. And I ran out of wherever I was going with that. Sorry.
It's fine.
But I'll make up for it. Giving you an ARC next month.
So we've talked a bit about the work that you could do on a monthly or quarterly basis. So, but what about if you have a bigger project that you want to tackle that is beyond funding of just your art supplies or whatever? Say you want to put together an entire art book and are looking at using Kickstarter or one of those other sourcing things. So what is your experience with using those platforms, and how do you go about both conceptualizing that and then getting that campaign started?
I can start this.
Go ahead.
I have friends who are incredible Kickstarter runners. Scary stuff. Kickstarters that you know fund in the first half hour kind of thing. Yeah. Screw them.
Yeah,
right?
no, I'm 100% with you there.
So I pick their brains on how to put together a Kickstarter. My first Kickstarter, my only Kickstarter so far, though I'm planning one for later this year, was a project where I took I do a weekly blog feature called Eating Authors, where I invite a different author in. They tell me their most memorable meal. I pimp their latest book and so forth. And it's been running for 10 years now. So last November, I reached out to roughly 100 of these people, and I said, can I reprint your meal in this book? And I asked because technically, I suppose I had the rights. It was still out there on my website. But you want to be a pro about this. You want to ask permission. And some people said no. And I honored that.
Manners.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these are people I don't want them seeing me at a convention going, you. So, but then I was herding cats of 100 different authors to get them to sign off on things, to send me their latest bio, and things of this nature. And the book came out. It was also a charity project. Everything once the Kickstarter was completed, any subsequent sales go to charity, cancer research, and to the Civil Emergency Medical Fund. So I'm not seeing a dime. But the challenging part was I then reached out to these 100 participants and said, "What can you give me? I need reward levels. Who wants to give me a free ebook? Who wants to give me a Tuckerization? Who wants to give me a signed copy of one of your books? By the way, I want you to pay the postage." And I didn't need that many people to come forward because I had 100 of them that I was asking, and a good portion, probably fully half of them, just ignored that request entirely.
Oh.
Yeah.
But literally dozens of them said, "Sure, you got it." And it didn't hurt that I said, "By the way, profits are going to go to cancer research." And as I've been discovering in the past year, there are a lot of us who either have had cancer or have lost someone to cancer and so forth, and so it's a subject of the heart, and people jumped forward to be involved. I wish the book had done better, or we'll continue to do better so that we can donate more money. But it funded, and it hit several of its stretch goals as well. And sending all the stuff out was involved. You cannot pre-plan enough. And it gets even trickier when you're relying on other people to make good on their goals. Some of the stretch goals or some of the specialty goals included one-on-one conferences or coffee clatches. And now you're trying to schedule your guest author with the 5 people who threw in an extra $20 to get to spend an hour with that guest author. And they don't want to hear, no, I can't do it at that time. So it ran on much longer than I thought.
Well, I've been working on approaching Kickstarter a little bit differently from how I did it early on. And early on, I was sort of like looking at it as this is how I'm going to fund a project that I can't afford to do myself. And I think that's how a lot of people look at this stuff. And as a result, I tended to, for my first 2 projects, I made, both of which failed, both of which did not fund. I made the mistake that I see a lot of authors making with this stuff, and that is to say, okay, I really want to make $20,000 from this book, so I'm setting that as my goal, and then I'm going to set everything else up around that target, because that's what I think I want to make off of this book. And that doesn't work very well in my experience.
No.
So instead, what I've been doing is I've been watching people. Dean Wesley Smith and Chris Rush are doing a great job with their Kickstarters right now. And I've watched what they've done for a few years now. And what they've done is they started off with some very, very small levels, like $1,000 a fund. Just the absolute bare minimum to get the thing out the door, what they needed to do it. Keep it really low. And the first one might fund it like a little bit over that. But over time, they've done so many of these things that now they're funding at much, much higher levels because they've built up a reputation on Kickstarter. They've built up a fan base that's used to using Kickstarter. And so all of a sudden, they're getting what essentially amounts to extra money on every release that they make because they're getting paid from a different set of readers from the people who are going to buy the book on Amazon. This is not the same pool. There's some people who might buy it on Kickstarter who might have gone to buy it on Amazon later. But one of the cool things that I'm noticing is that a lot of the people who buy on Kickstarter are not the Amazon readers. And so this is an opportunity to double dip. This is an opportunity to get a little extra money for every single book that you launch by just throwing up a Kickstarter. And if you do a Kickstarter for $1,000, and it funds at $1,500, who cares? That's $1,500 extra dollars. That's extra money in your pocket. And then you go, and after it's been published, you put it up on, after it's been done through Kickstarter, you publish it on Amazon or wherever else you're publishing, and voila, now you're getting your regular income too. So this is an extra on top of that. And so what I'm looking at doing is a series of Kickstarters in the second half of this year, where I'm going to be launching new books on Kickstarter first, and then after the Kickstarter is complete, launching them on Kindle and KU.
I like that.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
I'm going to steal that. Thank you very much.
Feel free.
The other thing that Dean and Christine are doing is they have a little group of other people who are running Kickstarters that they help to promote and support. And this is a wonderful example, and the only one I've seen really in the Kickstarter community, other than a service Kickstarter itself provides, of paying it forward. But they are promoting the idea that Kickstarter can be a force for indie publishing and should be. And that's really nice to see. And I don't say that just because they gave a bump to my project last year. But they did, and I was quite grateful for that.
Yeah, there was one thing I noticed with between Patreon and Kickstarter is if you can get a group of people that are doing a similar project or is in a similar timeline as you are, and you back each other. Like on Patreon, we there was 5 or 6 of us that gave each other $1 just so that way we had one thing, because it's a numbers game. Like even on Kickstarter, it's a numbers game. The minute you start hitting certain percentages, you're guaranteed almost success just because it helps with the algorithms.
Let me just add another reason to start a Kickstarter small and do a series of Kickstarters. And I wish I'd known about this. Getting the word out about your Kickstarter. is huge, and we've probably all gone through the experience that you put out something in social media, something like Facebook, and Facebook is the great arbiter of who's going to see your post. And this was really driven home when a friend of mine had like 3 days left in his Kickstarter, and I finally saw the post about it. And I went in and I would have gone all in to get. He was publishing the third book. Book had already come out. He was doing a deluxe edition of the third book in the series, and there were a limited number of sets of all three with a slipcase, and I would have thrown money at it.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, man, those went in the first 12 hours, and this is a 30-day run, and I'm hearing about it on day 27.
Yeah.
And so I said, I already have the book. I already have the ebook, so I'm just going to give you $5 because you're a good guy, and I'm happy to see it. And he writes, but you get comments back. He says, Lawrence, what the hell are you doing? And one of the things you get when you run a successful Kickstarter campaign is you get all those email addresses, which, yes, you're supposed to delete at the end of your Kickstarter campaign. Nobody does. And there is a button somewhere that you can press that says, when you sign up with Kickstarter, a specific Kickstarter, please inform me of your next project. So now you have direct access to the people that are going to fund your next project. You're not reliant on social media for them to get the word in a timely fashion. And the other piece of this is Kickstarter will let you set up your project well before it's going to start. And you can start advertising it then. You can start spreading the word then. And there's an option when you go to the page where you click inform me when this goes live. So again, you're less at the mercy of the algorithms of somebody else. And you're more apt to hit those people. And they've already demonstrated from prior Kickstarters that they want to promote and support your projects. So I intend to do much more of that going forward.
One of the benefits of Kickstarter is that you can always go to those failed projects and be like, hey, even if they don't sign up for those emails, you can still post and advertise your next project. So even though you might not have made it, the people that had supported you previously will still be interested because they supported you for a reason.
Yeah, I get a lot of tech toys and stuff off of Kickstarter, and I'll get updates like 2 years later from the people that an update from something I bought from somebody 2 years ago, saying, "Oh, hey, we've got another project you might be interested in. Check it out at this link." And I will check the link if I liked what they did last time. I'll definitely check it out. So that's great, a great tool.
What I hate. You fund it, you support a Kickstarter, it funds, and then they inundate you with meaningless updates because they're trying to stay connected. I don't want that. Send me the damn thing that I backed. Take whatever time you need to finish the book, the art project, the music, whatever it is that I've backed. Drop me a note maybe once a month saying, yeah, Granny died. We've had to push back the release date a little bit. Not a problem. We all have stuff going on. I don't need, nothing new to report. Hey, want to see my dog? I just took him to the vet. I don't need to see that. That's not why I backed you. And I won't say the project, but every time I get one of these things, I want to say, I want my $10 back because you've just annoyed the crap out of me. Again. I think I've gotten like 50 updates.
Oh, that's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Sounds good. 50 seems like a lot.
Maybe I'm exaggerating, but there is no useful content.
That's the problem.
And we're content creators. We should be sensitive to this sort of thing.
I'd be thrilled with 50 updates if they were all actually pertinent and had some and mattered to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Or had some drama. I was about to finish the project when a man stepped out of the alley and put a knife to my throat and said, give me all your supporters' email addresses. That would be exciting.
That sounds like, hey, this is a really funny story. Check me out on Patreon for more.
Yeah, there you go.
No, that's too manipulative. That's going to backfire too quickly.
You never know. They like your humor. Well, some of the benefits of Kickstarter is that once you start getting that first one in the door is the hardest. And 9 times out of 10, most people fail. It's trying to understand how the process works is usually a really good way it's a nice trial and error to understand because you don't lose anything by trying. Like if it fails, nothing happens. So I always recommend to just give it a shot, set a low goal. Kickstarter does a Make 100 in January, and they challenge all creators to make 100 things. And that's how I got in and got interested in because I was doing enamel pins. And yeah, no, my first one didn't go very well. I think I had 6 backers and that was it. And then the next one did much, much better because I learned a lot from the process. And check it out. I am sitting on my next Kickstarter for at least a year now, or a year and a half now, because my last one ended in such a spectacular failure because I decided to launch on January 6th this year.
Oh.
So it was like dead in the water. It was going to go nowhere.
Tell me it was a 1-week Kickstarter though, right?
It was a 30 days Kickstarter, or 26 day. But no, unfortunately, any posting I made got lost. It was on deaf ears. There was just so much political stuff that was happening in the world that there was no way I would get any advertising out because it was just not going to work.
Yeah. My friend launched a book on January 5th.
Yeah, I feel her. The upside is you can do it again. Be like, hey, this failed because circumstances. Let's try this again. And it also gives you the option to improve. Because sometimes there might have been something that you're like, oh, I really need to get this deadline. And then you come back to and be like, I like this idea better. And then you can go back and revise, just like we do with our books, and launch something better.
I want to challenge the conventional wisdom, though. I mean, we all reacted when you said you launched in December, early December like that. But my first big press book released on December 27th. What New York Publishing refers to as Dead Week. My publisher was closed that whole week, you know. And I went to David Hartwell, legendary editor at Tor, passed away a few years ago. We were at a convention. I said, I had known him for years. I said, David, I'm unhappy that the book's coming on the 27th. And they said, oh, no, Lawrence, that's great. Because they bumped it. It was supposed to come out 2 weeks earlier. And I said, all those Christmas sales I could have gotten. He says, Lawrence, you're an unknown author to these bookstores. Books coming in mid-December are going to sit on the dock. The boxes aren't going to be opened, and they're going to be returned unopened because nobody had the time to get to them to put them on the shelf, and they're going to be charged back against your royalties. Better to wait 2 weeks. Everybody got,
gift cards,
cash, gift cards, and there's your book. And it was like, oh.
When I was a kid, we used to get Barnes & Noble's gift cards every year for Christmas, and that was my favorite thing.
Me too.
So I'm not saying that timing translates to Kickstarter, but if I were doing a campaign like that, I would play to that. It's like, well, you've spent all of your money, you've overeaten. You've got a couple days off. You're sitting around with the top button on your pants unbuttoned because you've been eating nonstop since Thanksgiving. Hey, you won't actually be charged for this for another month or so. Support my Kickstarter.
That 26-day thing you mentioned, Andrea, I've heard that before too, but do you want to talk about that? Because that's not something I think most people know.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch the very beginning of your question.
Running a Kickstarter for 26 as opposed to 30 days. The whys.
I believe when you sign up for Kickstarter and you set your end date, they usually recommend 36 days because that's relatively the shortest month, February. So 30 days runs the span of most average months, but by doing it a little bit shorter, I have found adds a slight sense of urgency, because it also keeps it within the same month, depending on when you launch. And it makes it easier for people to remember, oh, yeah, I'm signing up this month. I want to be able to pay by the end of the month. And or I'm going to get charged by the end of the month. And then it also helps average out your weeks with any goals you want to hit. Be like, hey, first week I want to hit this goal. Second week I want to hit this goal. Or you're starting to look at your stretch goals and be like, okay, so it's less of a money thing and more of a time thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it can go both ways. Be like, hey, I really want to hit this goal. But once you add a date to it and it makes the math make sense, it seems to help. I don't know why, because I'm not a math person. The only math I do is knitting. But it works. And so sometimes actually running shorter Kickstarters as opposed to having it stretch longer also helps keep it fresh in people's minds. People are more likely to tell their friends about it because it's still relevant to when they find it. Yeah,
because if there's that, oh yeah, this isn't closing for another 4 weeks, then it's like, I'll wait and I'll get it later, and then they might forget.
Yeah. So sometimes it just helps. Granted, some Kickstarters do better for longer periods. Some work better if you do only a 12-week. I would not recommend 12 weeks unless you're really popular and you know that you can fund within the first week. For somebody who like me, where I usually start funding at around the 2-week mark, 2-3 mark, I want that extra week to hit those stretch goals, but I don't want to stretch it out thinking that I'm desperate for more. And it seems to be that nice medium where I hit my goals, I get a little bit of extra. I don't usually make a lot of profit on my Kickstarters, mostly because what I do is I fund what I'm making. I fund the shipping, because shipping is a surprisingly large amount of money, especially when you start shipping international.
Oh.
And anything, and then anything after that usually goes towards funding my next one. So, like, I really try and make sure that whatever I'm trying to fund is paid forward with anything extra, or I do little extra things like stickers or prints, if that's the case for those that do support.
If I can just add, check before you go live, check your shipping rates, particularly international shipping rates, which I had not done. And I had authors donating signed first editions of their books, which are the fastest thing that gets snapped up, right, for the rewards.
Yeah.
Only to discover that, it's $30 to ship this book to somewhere in Europe.
Yep.
It's
crazy.
Yeah.
And I had to reach out to the people who got those rewards and said, I thought it'd be 10.
Yeah.
And what do you want to do? I can refund your money. I can charge you the extra. You can agree to pay the extra, $20. And everyone who got caught up in that, and it was all on me. It was all my fault. But everyone said, here's the extra money. Yeah. And a little more besides.
Yeah.
It just blew me away. But you don't need that anxiety. So, work these things out in advance, and Kickstarter gives you the option when you're doing rewards like that of saying, oh, by the way, postage is additional. Mm-hmm. And you can list postage for different venues so that they know what they're getting into, and it's folded into the cost, and it also causes you to reach your goal that much sooner. Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword with the shipping costs and trying to hit those goals, because you realize that a lot of your profit with your goal that you set, you have to add the shipping cost to that goal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because if you only fund the amount that you need to have your project, and then you still have to ship things out afterwards, you're just going to end up having to eat the cost, and it sucks.
This is why I love ebooks.
Digital things are amazing.
Oh my God.
There is a significant of math required for running a Kickstarter, and the only thing I can suggest is do your research. Make sure that you have a relatively good percentage for European and Australian shipping, especially if you know that you have fans in that base, because like I think it's cheaper to send to Europe, but it's more expensive to Australia. I think it's like $10 more. So like something 30 to 30 to Europe
it's
was about
ridiculous,
50
whatever it
to
is.
Australia. It's kind of stupid, and like it doesn't go any faster either. So being aware of those cost difference, I found that it works in two different ways. One, you have it built into your goal, or two, they pay afterwards, and you use something like BackerKit or something else that helps you manage who your backers are and have them pay separately. But you have to make sure that that information is available for them so they know that they're supporting you in this, but they still have to cover the cost of the shipping. And if they decide to only do this, they are not obligated just to do the shipping, but that means you're not obligated to send them their things.
Oh, that sounds scary to me.
I don't like it. I had one really good Kickstarter that went really well, and I've only had one person who never got back to me on their shipping, and I still have their item.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like I don't have their address, so it's not like I can even send it to them.
Every now and then, it's months and months later, I'll get somebody finally completing their form, and I have no idea what this is in reference to. But you mentioned something I wanted to address. There are, as always happens, anytime you have a successful industry, and I think Kickstarter is a successful industry, other companies crop up like Remoras, who have fixed themselves to the body of Kickstarter. So you're running your first Kickstarter, and you'll get a note from some organization like BackerKit, and they've thrown $1 at your Kickstarter just to put their name in the game, and they're offering their services, and they're trying to get you as a customer. And you probably don't need BackerKit for your first Kickstarter. You're not going to attract that many supporters, and it's not going to be worthwhile. If you're one of these people who, if you're Brandon Sanderson and you have to hire a team of people because you're going to ship 10,000 units, and that's just the first day, then you'll pay somebody to do the work, because at that point, and this is true of anything in our industry, you ask yourself, is it a better use of my time? What was that? Is it a better use of my time to do this myself, or to pay someone to do it for me?
Well, just remember Wibbo. Would I be better off writing?
Yeah.
If I'm making more per hour writing new words than I am doing a thing myself, it's better to hire. If the cost to hire somebody to do a thing is less than what I earn per hour writing, then I would be better off hiring somebody and spending those extra hours writing another book.
This assumes you have the discipline that once you've freed up that time to write, you're actually going to use it to write and not play video games.
This is true.
Yeah. For me, I found that the best part is like the shipping and labels and trying to figure out who I owe what is the hardest to manage, especially when you get like 100, 200 backers. Like for small fries, that's a lot, especially when you have, and you need to know where they go. And so I did BackerKit twice. Once to kind of help me manage it, and second because I wanted to see how it worked with collecting addresses and the shipping fees. And for my best advice, don't use BackerKit unless you're making a couple $1,000s, because the amount that you lose in fees is almost the same amount you spend on the shipping. So if you're okay with downloading an Excel sheet with all the shipping labels and things like that for a couple hundred backers, just do it. It sucks, but honestly, you're going to end up saving yourself money too.
I agree completely. And this doesn't necessarily work so much for people who are creating physical art. But man, for authors, you just keep throwing more ebooks in.
Yeah.
Stretch goals, ebooks. If we hit the next level, I'll give you my last 3 novels in ebook format.
And add-ons.
And add-ons, absolutely. This is
A
book
lot of your
3.
older books in is add-ons.
Yeah. And particularly for indie authors who own their own rights, you can do the larger your backlist, the more you can. Now, some of your hardcore supporters, they've been with you through all those other books, but they're your hardcore supporters. You've already got them. They're already supporting the project.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity for people who are new to your work to say, not only am I going to support this project, but man, you're going to give me the 4 books that in the series that came before this. If I tell enough friends to throw $5 at this to get the ebook, yeah. And you get that snowball going for you. And now, assuming your books, don't suck, you have another hardcore supporter for the next project, and somebody who shows up on your Patreon or signs up for your newsletter.
And the other thing I'd add too is that publishing Kickstarter, the Kickstarter for games and for tech and for lots of other things is well developed, but publishing Kickstarter is still relatively in its infancy. And we just had Brandon do the huge thing with his Kickstarter, which blew the lid off of everything. And everybody who does a publishing Kickstarter is going to expand the audience of publishing Kickstarters of all the other ones a little bit. So I would strongly encourage everybody to go out and just give this a shot. There's no downside. If you don't succeed, there's no cost. You're not out, $1,000 for trying this thing. Go out and give it a shot, because even if you fail, you'll learn something new, and we'll help by doing these things together. We'll help everybody who's doing them.
Yep. Like even for like a book and you're just starting out like me, I plan to Kickstarter for my book cover. Then I'm going to, stretch goals are going to be hiring a proper editor, because I can ask friends to help me edit, but I want to be able to hire somebody that knows how to do it properly. Like small goals that can build over time is a really great way to get started with Kickstarter. If just because it gets you out there, it puts you in front of an audience that you won't find on Amazon. It makes it a little bit more personal, and you're not losing anything by it at all.
I agree completely. The one piece I would add, and this applies also to Patreons, what is it about your story that sets you apart? That, makes it, oh, it's another Patreon. Oh, it's another person publishing their book on Kickstarter. What is new and different about it? And that will catch attention, and that will separate you from the herd. It will make you stand out as unique. And I'll give you an example, because the next Kickstarter I'm planning is the 3rd book in a series. The first 2 were my trad pub books. And I originally planned a trilogy, and Tor Books said, yeah, we're good with 2. Thanks very much. So I'm not getting the rights back to those first 2 books for years. And I tell people when they read book 2, don't read the last paragraph and you'll be happy, because the last paragraph is this huge cliffhanger. So I want to write that 3rd book. I've had an outline for that 3rd book since I submitted book 2, because I submitted 2 and 3 together. And the hope is that the Kickstarter will fund the time to take writing that book. And stretch goals are things like, can I afford the same professional artists who did the covers for books 1 and 2? Which were very iconic and probably way outside my price range. And it's a perfect thing to do a Kickstarter for. And people can relate to that. And it also has an underdog story. Take that, traditional publishing. At least this is my hope. I'll let you know. It's going to probably start at the end of the year. Though not the first week in December.
Awesome.
So I think that is a great way to end. Unfortunately, we have hit 10:55 and we are about to close. This was a great panel. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Amy, for joining us last minute.
Of course.
We all really appreciate having you on. Before we close up, where can we find you? Lawrence?
You can find me at lawrencemschoen.com. You can find me on Twitter at KlingonGuy. because for my sins, I am the founder and director of the Klingon Language Institute, and I'm on Facebook as Lawrence M. Schoen, and also as Lawrence M. Schoen Writer Guy is my author page.
Perfect. Kevin?
My books are up all over Amazon. Virtually all of my stuff is in Kindle Unlimited, so that's usually the best place to find me. You can also spot me at kevinomclaughlin.com and on all over the internet. So,
Amy?
You can find me at amyduboff.com and on most social at Amy Duboff. My Facebook group is Queen of Space Opera.
Perfect. And I'm Andrea Fornero. You can find me at Ariescapes basically everywhere except for Kickstarter. I am Lady Davian because they don't let you change name after you publish. Thank you again very much for having this panel, and I believe we are done. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Roll tape.